Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the program. I'm going to try this again. I've been on air, actually on Spreaker, for about 5 minutes. So anybody out there, record this and download it after the show, because that's going to be a blooper you're going to want to keep around for some time. Anyway, welcome to the Den of Lore. I'm your host, Chris George Zuger, and we're going to learn some cool shit tonight. And I'm hoping that John, who is currently on the queue right now, and he can't hear me. Well, he can hear me. I can't hear him. So I get to at least say very, very naughty things about him, and get to see his facial expression. Maybe get some screen captures. That right there. And that one's captured. I'm putting that up on social media. We're gonna learn some cool shit tonight, as I mentioned, with John Cadman welcoming back to the program. We're welcoming him back to the program, and we're gonna learn how to build a pyramid machine, or at least how he built this one, which he's currently in front of at the moment. And let me get the camera on here to myself, so that I can thank our lovely patrons who make sure that we can actually do things like improve the program on a constant basis. The reason I can do what I'm doing right now with John is because our donors allowed us the fantastic ability to upgrade our audio as well as our web server. So now we actually are on Spreaker, live audio, and I have a new audio card which I'm using for Skype, so I can actually talk to him while we're almost off air, but not to you guys. But we can at the same time. It's like we're a real radio studio now. And our patrons help us do that. They help us build this show brick by brick. If it was not for our illustrious masters and masters, Jackie from across the pond, Pat from Brooklyn, our two illustrious masters, and our masters, Jenny, Dobromir Raynov, Lee Veltman, Chuck Schwartz, Jared Thompson, Mrs. Fox, Roses, Wayne, Joshua Ematic, Mark Catalano, and our den mother, Ellen McCurdy, in addition to our other patrons, such as Eric J. Ferguson, Martin Hawkinson, Photopic, Nick Zed, Craig Yurt, Charles Davis, Seattle Bauer, Michael Eckhoff, Dean John Kenwood, Anthony Derry, Atlantic Koosh, Venice from Magical Egypt, Christopher Moody, Robin Webley, and courtesy of denoflore.com's PayPal button, hobby. If you want to support the show, if you want to support independent broadcasting, go to denoflore.com, hit either become a patron or hit the become a PayPal button, sign up. You get tons of perks. We've got a private broadcast on next week with none other than Richard Casaro. And we're going to be doing that for a book that Denver Michaels and I are currently writing called Men of Renown. So that's going to be part of our research. And I'm getting better at doing this before the before the music runs out. Let me get John on here. Calling John Cadman. Is John Cadman there?
John Cadman's here.
John Cadman's
Good
here.
evening, Chris.
Good evening. Oh, it's a screen share. That's the Den of Lore. Oh, my goodness. Where is my... Is the middle screen? That's the left screen. Right screen. Right screen. Aha! Okay, I figured this out. I redid all of the video. There we go. How's John Cadman? How's it going, John? You're looking good. Is it chilly out there?
Good evening, Chris.
Yeah, it was cold.
It's cold, yes.
It's cold. Layers. You have layers. Well, I have to see, you've been a fantastic sport while we've been getting this, everything going. We had last year, or not last year. Well, you were on last year, and you're also on for our 1 year show, which was actually pretty cool. I was very celebratory, and I have to thank you very much for providing the insight that allowed me to actually use a liquid cooling for this new machine that we're using. But speaking of machines and liquid, we have behind you something you've been working on for a while. Last week when we were supposed to do the show, it didn't quite work out because my machines weren't working, your machines weren't working. We're like, we're just going to do this at a better date. How does it work?
Things are working now.
Things are working now.
Times the charm.
Oh, fantastic. Now, knowing that it's very cold, how did you want to be able to proceed with this demonstration?
Well, right now I've got the model, this pulse generator model, so it's not running and there's no water in the reservoir. And I have the wastegate valve, which is essentially just like a check valve, but reversed. So this is essentially the same. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start the water filling the reservoir. It should fill pretty quickly, and then I'll just start it running, and let's go from there.
Do you want me to put the water in there
Sure,
for you?
sure.
Okay.
Okay, Bro Mike's
So-
going to be putting the water in the reservoir, and we're going to get this thing rolling.
This is the first time I think I've ever seen a pyramid started up in person. I know that we had about
Nobody's seen it.
nobody's seen it.
Other than Chris Dunn's been here, and Rob Arnold. But other than that, nobody's really been here. Dr. Jack Clay was here.
Wow. So is this going to be another? Since it has started up, it has worked, and it has essentially done what you have described and what you have theorized the interior of the subterranean chamber is done.
Reservoir is being filled up.
Fantastic. Can you go through the process of, first of all, how you decided to do this, and how did you start building it?
Okay, the full background on it is I'd come across back in 1999 when the year 2000 end of the world from various different forms was supposed to happen. Richard Noon had a book called 5/5/2000. Pretty popular book and at most bookstores. Actually a pretty good book on a lot of the ancient Egypt scene and Templars and that sort of thing and lost civilizations. One thing he had in the book was Edward Kunkel's work, which had to do with the possibility that the Great Pyramid was some sort of advanced water pump. So that's what Edward Kunkel had surmised. And he was from back in between the 30s and I think he passed in 60 or 62. But he had done a lot of schematics about not only the subterranean chamber of this pyramid, but he had also done, his theory was that the upper part of the pyramid, which this does not incorporate, was part of a really unusual water pump assembly. And so I thought his work was pretty good on the subterranean chamber. So I built what he had discussed, and he said he had kind of made it work, but I'm thinking he didn't, because I built what he had described and it didn't work. And actually the first model that I have here, there's a model on the just off to the side, is the white model is as described by Kunkel, and it never did run, and he had some of the shafts and stuff wrong. And I put hundreds of hours into this model, and it seemed like it would work. But the thing was, it seemed that he had parts right, and then parts were way off. And so I eventually figured out where the various shafts were supposed to go. It was actually on the December 31st, 1999. So it was the end of the millennium. And so then I built the new version, changed some of the lines, and started on first try back in April 3rd of 2000. So that's where it originated. Now Kunkel, why he built it, or his theory, was from a bet where he figured he could find out how the Great Pyramid was built. And so he went with the water locks theory, which makes sense in a lot. You can lift lots of things and you can push things very easily. So that, it makes sense. So that's where it originated, but his model didn't, his layout never did work. So I just corrected what he had wrong. And then when it did finally run back in April of 2000, I'd actually read Chris Dunn's book, The Giza Power Plant. I'd read that back in 1999, summer 99. And Chris Dunn had described that he believed there was some sort of machine in the subterranean chamber, that the machine parts were long gone, but created a pulse upwards from the subterranean chamber up towards the king's chamber, which would cause the pyramid to start resonating. And so immediately when the pump first ran in 2000, it was immediately obvious that Chris Dunn was right about part of it, that there was a pulse that was directed upwards into the Great Pyramid. And it came from the subterranean chamber. The only thing was it was a hydraulic pulse and not a mechanical, not some sort of machine in there. So it's a water pulse. So that's where it originated. So contacted Chris and discussed it with him. And eventually he did fly out to take a look at it in November 2005. And got to see it actually run. So right now we're filling the model. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to put on, let me get a little closer on this. Now this is the, let me see here. Now this is the wastegate valve, which is just literally, it's just a sliding check valve, which is this basically the same as a flap type check valve, but it's a plunger as opposed to a flap. It just allows water to go one way. So I made in round what I would have conceived would have been a rectangular pipe and a rectangular sliding, like a plunger. So that would be consistent with what's at Giza from the evidence. So I had to do what was at the evidence. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to put this valve on here so the both work. So I'm going to do the little plunger valve. Just take a second.
No,
Elevator music go dun 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 da 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 da.
So, these are, at least looks to be several boulders that are centered around this construction inside where the water is currently filling. You can see that water stream in the center, or at least just off center. I said, was it 100,000 hours? That's quite impressive.
This is actually what would be called the dead end shaft of the Great Pyramid. So I'm going to shut that off just to keep rolling. And then, I don't know if you can pan up to the left, Mike. I'll go up here. Now this here, up here is an air escapement line to remove any of the excess air from the subterranean chamber.
If you wanted to show them that line again, but they couldn't really see.
I'm just going to start running.
I think it's just simply amazing that nobody's actually seen this except for like 4 people before. We've had updates through social media, but this is the first time I've ever actually seen it turned on or even just filling up. If the idea that it was a machine was first postulated years ago. Whoa.
Okay, I'm gonna make sure there's no air in it.
That's a sound I have not heard before.
So this would be automatically self-correct. This would be automatically self-correcting. It's still filling a bit. Second.
Sorry, I'm just updating the social media with some screen caps.
Okay.
How exactly is that sound being generated?
Okay.
He wanted to know how that sound is being generated.
Okay, now the sound is being generated. What's going on here is there's a line that went from the bottom of the subterranean chamber down to the Nile, and the Nile used to be about 2,000 feet away. And there's this line that goes in front of the Sphinx, or the Sphinx temple, and it would have exited into the Nile at that time. So what's happening is there's water that's flowing, say past a check valve. So water's flowing by, and then when it hits a certain velocity, it drags the valve closed and it slams the valve shut. And what that does, when you stop water instantaneously or near instantaneous, it causes a compression wave. And what we're actually having is a compression wave being created and then bouncing back up the water in the line. And so you get a compression wave, and then right after the compression wave, you get a rarefaction wave, which is equal and opposite to the compression wave. And so with the rarefaction wave, that immediately sucks that valve back open because it's extreme low pressure. So this compression wave goes up the pipe, and kind of in the same manner as, say, electricity through a wire. The water is just the conduit for that particular compression wave.
Now,
Turning off your faucet really fast in your house.
Yeah, if you turn off in older homes, if you turn off faucets really fast, you get a hammer, you get bang. Well, this is extreme. It's called it's a shock wave, and can travel actually quite a distance.
Now, how did you model? Well, first of all, how closely is what's in those rocks modeled after what's inside the Great Pyramid?
It's the model on this. I actually modeled it exactly what's in this for the subterranean section. Now, this is just the area that's 100 feet below the base of the Great Pyramid. And around all the pyramids, they used to have an enclosure, and which would have been a reservoir. And that was being fed from the ancient Lake Moeris, which was uphill and inland from it, which was connected to the Nile.
I know the answer to this question because I listened to the last show you were on, and I remember what I said, which was, how did the water get out if there's a giant hole in the bottom of it?
How did the water get out
Of the subterranean chamber? Is there, there's a massive hole?
I can pan the camera down.
Oh, okay.
Hey, panning down.
So these are actually the models of the subterranean chambers of various forms. So this is a 1 to 48 scale model of the subterranean chamber. And so this would be 27 feet. This is 46 feet across. And then water would come in through a 3-foot pipe, square pipe, into the actual room itself. Now this room was, I think it's 12 feet here at the entrance. And then straight across, there was a 2-foot by 2-foot shaft. So water would shoot across the room, and then it would swirl around. But down in the bottom, there's still this pit shaft that drops down, and it's not fully excavated, although they did excavate. It's 13 feet deep right now, but it used to be, it went down to 26 feet back in the 1880s, I believe. So it would drop down through here, and then it'd go 2,000 feet down to the Nile.
And what would be the purpose of making something that large that would essentially be, well, to any of my electronic DJ friends, deep house in terms of its BPM? It's all it's doing is it's making a sound. Why is that important or significant?
The significance is actually that this compression wave, which would be equivalent to the shaft itself that would go down there. The significance is the compression wave itself would go up this square shaft, then bounce off a 45-degree plane elbow, and then sound in water, when it travels, it actually bounces, say, equivalent to like a pool ball on a pool table. So it just bounces straight up from this 45-degree plane. And then, that's right. And then it would strike the ceiling and shoot a shock wave straight up into the core of the Great Pyramid itself, which would be, there's 2 rooms above it, up in the actual core, and there's what's called a Queen's Chamber, by name only, and above that's a King's Chamber, by name only. So the King's Chamber was made out of rose quartz granite, and it's freestanding from the bulk of the Great Pyramid itself. The room is, and so it's allowed to resonate. So this resonating room, when it gets a compression wave shooting up into it, it would cause it to resonate quite intensely. It'd be loud. It'd be very intense.
Well, I'm assuming so because I'm hearing it right now, and well, that's pretty damn loud even on this end.
It is loud. It's on this model, even though it only has a little bit of a drop of the water, I have 120 psi spikes at the valve.
Wow.
Actually from using pressure gauges, so it's not just guesses, but I believe it's actually significantly higher in the instantaneous spike, probably around 300 psi is my thought. So
yeah,
that compression wave when you look at surface area of the rim, I mean, even in this model, this is like 7 inches by 11 inches, and that's 77 square inches of surface area on the top. If you're putting out, let's say 40 psi, 40 psi times 77, 4 times that is 28. So it has about 3,000 pounds being pushed up on this model itself, on that surface area. It's significant. On the Great Pyramids, and this is 1/4 inch to the foot is what I used. Because there's 3-foot shafts, and there's 4-foot shafts, and there's 2-foot shafts. So 4 by 4, you use 1/4 inch to the foot, then you get 1 inch by 1 inch square shafts, and 3/4 inch shafts, and 1/2 inch shafts. So that's why I went that way.
Now, I've got a question coming in from Nug in the YouTube chat, and he's asking whether it works similar to a ram pump.
It is it's a very high-tech hydraulic ram pump. It's way more advanced than a hydraulic ram pump. I am pretty well versed in them. They've been around since I think it was 1760s, or the Montgolfier brothers in France made them with a cannonball of a pipe. And it's similar, but it's way more high tech. And that, well, it's friendlier for one thing, but because it runs better.
Now, from the original model, what modifications or allowances have you had to incorporate into the design?
The only thing I changed from the Great Pyramid itself was I utilized some round pipes just to make it easier. And I only utilized those. I only utilized the round pipes. I oversized them a bit, and only in the areas which I knew it wasn't critical. So the round is the only thing I changed.
And you said it took about 100,000 hours. How many iterations have you gone through to get to this point?
How many hours has been on this model?
Well, you had mentioned that it was about 100,000 hours in total, or was it just on this particular model?
My God. As far as the build or the running?
Both?
The build took thousands of hours. The runnings, I've run it for 6 months at a whack, non-stop. It's on a seasonal creek, so if there's water, it runs. I don't really know how many hours that is. Use a calculator. It's about 60 beats per minute, pretty much. But it's variable.
AB in YouTube chat's asking, what would you say about the other two pyramids next to the Great Pyramid, as they do not appear to have the same function?
I couldn't hear any of that.
You want to know about the other two pyramids that are next to the Pyramid of Giza?
Oh.
They don't have the same designs inside of them.
I'm not sure about them. I've studied the designs. I heard there's a lot of different theories on it. It has possibly something to do with some sort of coupled oscillation. But that's really the Great Pyramid itself, is this coupled oscillator.
Not being an engineer, and I know basic principles. When you say there's a valve and it only allows water to go one way, I understand the significance of that. Most of the stuff you would be able to say would go right over my head, so please do excuse me if I'm asking for a little bit of clarification on this.
One second.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I'm back. I had to turn the volume up a little. I just couldn't hear it.
I was going to say, what would an oscillator do in a system like this? What would the purpose be if this is what your hypothesis is on what the other two pyramids would be used for?
Okay, now the coupled oscillator, now that was originally came from Chris Dunn. And his belief is that the pyramid itself, which is built not only on, it was on flattened bedrock, limestone bedrock. So it's actually very much bonded to the Earth's plate. That using a coupled oscillator, the pulse of the pyramid, and then the resonance of the Earth. The Earth resonates at Schumann's resonance, about 7 hertz, 7 point something 28 or. And so if you can couple it, then the pyramid starts to resonate at the frequency of the planet itself. Now that could allow to draw off a significant amount of energy from the planet. But, a secondary notion, also what Chris Dunn had said, was that it would, by creating significant pulses, and these would be able to be registered anywhere on the planet for sure, because the Earth rings like a bell, as Tesla pointed out, and that's part of his drawing of a larger portions of energy from the planet, free energy sort of thing.
So it was not necessarily that it was a machine. Well, it was a machine, but it was also a method to get electricity from the planet. Is that what you're saying?
Not necessarily to get electricity from a planet. If nothing else, by creating pulses, it would reduce the number of high-intensity earthquakes at any place it was located. Is automatically you'd create a shock into the Earth, and then as the plates start, instead of sticking, they start to slide smoother. And I know they've done experiments with this. But down in California, I know they did some with some big explosives. I think it was offshore. I think the Navy did it, if I'm not mistaken, to cause a slippage.
It's very similar to in landslides, how rocks will essentially have the same properties as water coming downhill. That's from the vibration, is it not?
Just ask them to repeat it.
Could you repeat that, please?
That would be a very similar property to... Oh, sorry, I'm getting some feedback on that side. Wouldn't that be a similar property to how in landslides, rocks will create such a resonance that they will act like water even though it's stone when coming downhill?
I hadn't heard that, but it's interesting.
Something to Google, because it's like, imagine boulders the size of, well, that cascading as if it were flowing river. Also one of the scariest things you'll ever see.
That would be scary. This boulder is from the Ice Age, the last Ice Age. So this was actually, the top of it was sheared, and then it's ground flat, and then it's actually split. And where it was split was from the pressure of the ice down on it. So it was actually split in place.
Well, you're located on the West Coast, correct? Near Portland?
Yeah, I'm in Pacific Northwest, just south of Vancouver, BC, pretty close to the border, north of Seattle, about 100 miles north of Seattle.
Try to see here.
So this used to be under a sheet of ice. This is glacial area during last Ice Age.
What are sorry, it's just as it's going off, I'm like, okay, I have to try and keep my vocal cadence outside of the pump's sound.
I know it keeps going.
It's just getting faster and faster. It's like, man, that pump is getting really excited.
You can change the frequency. of this particular model. That's what they did with like the dead end shaft, that was used to tune the amplitude and the frequency of the model. Very slick. It was incredibly smart way to do it. Being able to use just a small valve to change the back pressure in the model. If you change the back pressure, it changes the magnitude or the amplitude of the pulse. And all.
Now, what do you think of the claim that at least AB is currently asking that given that the various Egyptians never spoke of the purpose of the pyramids in this way, doesn't this imply pre-dynastic Egypt created the pyramids, or as it was built tens of thousands of years ago?
I believe it'd be pre-dynastic. I think they just found it. It was there. I think that and the Sphinx, just from John Anthony West and Robert Schock and their work on the redating of the Sphinx. It's all contiguous, consistent. So it's pre-dynastic.
What engineering difficulties have you overcome or run into that's got this thing working? Obviously, something this complex or ancient in terms of its design, you probably didn't just say, hey, this is kind of what it looks like from pictures and throw it together in your backyard, in a day. It took some time.
I had a lot of failures. I
think the biggest problem is that you've never been there and never seen it first.
Well, the schematics on the subterranean chamber are really bad. Whereas every part of the actual pyramid itself, the upper part, they've done measurements and pictures and diagrams down to, a millimeter, and it's extremely detailed. The subterranean chamber, I had an incredibly hard time matching the pictures to schematics and descriptions. There were tons of errors in different people's books and research. So that was the hardest thing. Back in 2013, Brian Forrester went down in the subterranean chamber and took some video of some of the fins over on the far side. Mm-hmm. And so my brother Mike, he did screen captures and modified the subterranean chamber a bit. Making it the original model was probably the toughest. Getting the layout. It's a very strange room with hydraulic fins.
And
so getting the layout correct.
Now, obviously, you've probably been approached with this question at one time, and since I kind of know you pretty well, I guess at this point, since we've been talking back and forth for the last year, I think I can get away with this question. If you're saying that you've modified it, wouldn't that go to lead some people to think it's like, well, if it's been modified, it's not from the original design. How do we know that's actually its function? How have you been able to demonstrate that it's as close to the original as possible without saying, well, an angle here or an angle there, it doesn't really matter that much, when in engineering, at least from the engineers that I do know, if a quarter of an inch can mean a lot in 1,000 years, or in 10 years, or in a year.
It's as close to the Giza Plateau layout as possible.
Okay.
And I used, topographical maps, and then there was also, used that for a lot of it, and then also did confirmation with, they did like the Egyptian Water Department back in 1980. They did a shaft down to see what the water table was around Cairo, because that's Cairo area, and they'd run into some rose quartz granite. It was 30 feet down, and it's a limestone area. So if you come up with a drill bit with rose quartz granite, that's that comes from 500 miles away. So that says that there's artifacts that weren't originally there, and about 30 feet deep, and that's also where the Nile used to be. So I used every possible source of information about where the Nile used to be, the depth of the Nile at that point. See, Mark Lerner, in his book about the pyramids, he actually had descriptions of what they did on the soil samples to figure out how long the debris was there. So it's as close to Giza Plateau as possible. And I tried different lengths of the wastegate shaft. So this is 34 feet long, and that's to get it down to where the Nile would be on scale. But I went with shorter pipes. I thought that'd be far easier than long pipes, and so I did 10 foot, and I did 10 and 20, and I did 5 foot, and so I tried all these different layouts, and it runs poorly, erratically, if you don't do Giza layout. So I would say this is probably 90 to 95% accurate. So I did as close as I could.
You're a married man?
I have a fiance.
Well, it's close enough. How much does this drive her insane? I have to ask, because if I did this, my wife would kill me. She's like, "It's like you got a podcast. You're building a pyramid? Fuck that! No."
Well,
it's like that's a little bit too far for her.
Well, Barb she's been very supportive. The only thing she says is, "Why'd you pick such a large project? Because it's so big, and it's been so many years. I mean, this is 18 years."
I'm sorry, I have to. That's what she said.
And so
Yep.
I just said, "Well, just pick me. I didn't pick it." And what are you gonna say? It drives me crazy too, because it's like there's no funding for it or anything like that. It's just keep building. And when we built this model, my brother Mike and I built this in 2016, because Chris Dunn was coming to visit, and he did. And oh my God, if it wasn't for my brother and doing concrete work and packing stuff and building the reservoir and just showing up at the middle of the night to help me move stuff around, et cetera, it wouldn't have even gotten done. So it drives me crazy too.
Now, what was the process that you've gone through for this iteration, or this model to get it going? Like, did you model the subterranean chamber first, or like how did you build it? At least as far as the easy explanation, if you can.
Easiest explanation. I'll just hold this up. Can't just leave it where it is. So this here model is the one that I've worked on and modified, and my brother worked on and modified the most. Mm-hmm. So this is as close to accurate. All the hydraulic fins are here. And so once this is built, then used silicone, poured silicone in it, and then pull that out. And the silicone mold has layouts for the pipes. And then at that point, just lay it flat, the silicone mold, and I've got a mold around it, and just poured concrete over this. So So then once it's set up and you pull this out, all the pipes and everything are in place, and you've got a concrete model from this. So you can repeat the production quite simply. And then once I built that, then the next step was to actually measure it first. I set it in this boulder with this big crack in it, and made sure that the exit pipes would be allowed to go out, and then actually built up concrete up to the model, which can be seen back in the back here. They built up concrete and then surrounded the model with concrete. So it's permanently set in that boulder. It's part of it at this time. So that's kind of how we went. And there was a lot of challenges in that there's the reflective elbow that goes out of the pit. So you've had to make a pipe that goes down, and then a 45-degree plane. 45-degree plane, which is so this would be the reflective elbow. So I actually created a pipe with this elbow, and because the shocks are so intense, and I've destroyed many models previously, and once you put this in the rock, you can't have fail. It's not going anywhere. You only get one shot. So we actually put the pipe, and it's all in concrete, probably about to this distance, and so the whole pipe is put in concrete. And then for this pipe, I used 1.25" Schedule 80 conduit. Now, there's different wall thicknesses on pipes. There's Schedule 40 is normal, and then Schedule 80 is the super heavy duty pipes. There's lower classes than that. So I went with the heaviest pipe possible coming out of it. So this thing, it stretches the pipe. I actually have to anchor the pipe at the far end. So it's not, well, otherwise you get like a 1/4 inch stretch of the pipe itself. And when we're shooting for instantaneous closing a valve, you don't want stretching, because then that reduces the pulse. So you had to get that as tight as possible.
Now, I'm also hearing that apparently some people who apparently know something about engineering more than I do. I know pipes hold water. That's pretty much the extent of my knowledge. Apparently people are saying it sounds like it's almost out of pressure. Do you have water coming in there?
Yes.
Like through like just standard municipal water flow, or is it rainwater collection? How do you power this?
There's a creek here, a seasonal creek, and I just have an 1.25" line that it gravity feeds to a reservoir. Maybe we can do a side view of it at some point. But it's just gravity feeding, and then the excess is running out. And at Giza, what you're looking at is nobody contests the fact that there's walls around the pyramids. That's not an issue. And then there's causeways that go down to the Nile. That's not an issue. And so the overflow would just go down the causeway. So you feed it too much water is the thing. And so you have overflow. So you create a static level. So you always have the same level for the whole machine. You want to have it, you have to have consistent levels. Otherwise it changes the compression waves, because you have a different pressure. Back pressures in water changes the viscosity of the water itself, the density of the water. And if you change the density through either temperature or atmospheric pressure, or the head or the height drop of the water, then you've got to adjust it. So you need a static level at the reservoir by too much water and then running over. So that's what we've done here. Is I've got a creek water flow that feeds enough, just dumps into the reservoir, and then has overflow that goes out the back. And then you change the pressure. The back pressure changes the pulse. So I'm going to actually open up this is the dead end shaft that just has a little ball valve on it. So I'm going to be quiet, and then I'll just change the pressure from fully closed to fully open. By the way, hydraulic ram pumps won't do this. We're at changing pulse rate.
By the way, I'm very sorry to anyone who's listening to this on Spreaker or downloads from denoflore.com. If you need to use the washroom right now, you're on your own.
Excuse me?
I was telling our audio listeners that from all the running water, if they need to take a leak, they're on their own.
Okay.
Abu Rawash is, or I'm completely butchering that, so everyone take a shot. As we know, is the quote-unquote exploded pyramid. What is your own Abu Rawash experience?
The stone Abu Rawash?
Well, that was the exploded quote-unquote pyramid. You've had a few failures. What is your either most epic or most hilarious? If it happens to be the same thing, that'd be fantastic.
Most beautiful. I've got a model over here which had a concrete top on it. And the first time I pressurized it at all, it blew the concrete top off. So that's kind of epic. My first models in 2000 I made one out of epoxy and fiberglass, normal construction type techniques. Yeah, it just expanded and cracked, and it was some heavy duty construction. I just didn't foresee the pressures. The pressures surprised me. And I've had schedule 40 pipe fittings break. I've broken quite a few. Usually elbows that are coming off the race gate line, and they're rated for, I think it's 480 psi. So I didn't see that coming. Oh my goodness!
Can you give us a reference of scale about what that would mean in terms of everyday use items? Like for if you're saying Schedule 4 in terms of pipe or rated for 400 psi, these, people usually think hundreds, like, oh, that's nothing. But no, pressure can kill you if you're not careful. And obviously, if it's doing this type of damage, it's quite a lot of pressure. What would be a reference that we can relate to in terms of whether it's just regular running tap water or water coming out of a hose, etc.?
Okay, regular running tap water is about 45 psi is pretty normal, pounds per square inch. And this pump actually puts out about that. Just out of the output, I've used gauges on it to check the output pressure. So that's a tenfold of normal tap pressure is what pipes are rated for, and the fittings. I've broken. I have a bunch of them. I've broken a lot of fittings. So it's rated 10 times what normal pressures are, and they're just gives kind of an idea of the magnitude of the shocks.
And Nug is asking does the water return to the reservoir, or does it have an anti-siphon? Or is it a run to waste? Which I think is El Nino who is suggesting that.
You could have put it. They could have put it back to the reservoir. I've tested for that. It does work. It also could have pumped to the higher than the top of the Great Pyramid, because it puts out at site at Giza, it would put out no less than 3,000 psi. No less than that. That's very conservative. Because this is plastic, and Giza is non-flexible limestone pipes. So, you're getting truly instantaneous shocks.
And could this be used to drive like an air-powered electric generator of some kind? A ModWiz 125, which is the most awesome nickname we have in chat right now, I think he's looking at more electric generation. I know that we discussed pulling energy from the Earth to prevent high-intensity earthquakes, but could it have been used for power?
I'm almost certain it was used for power, through some sort of coupled oscillator. But I see then you're getting into theories, and it's hard until something's completely proven with running models. It's hard to say, yes, that's exactly what it's used for. Chris Dunn has absolutely the most extensive experience and super grounded, and so he actually came up with the Giza power plant book, but that was, I think he had 20 years over there before he even wrote that in 98. He's been, his brain has been challenged and picked extensively in forums, and I've been on the forums, so he actually knows every detail and had lots of his own discoveries there. So he's actually thinking that there was hydrogen being produced that was in the Queen's chamber, and he's going with some sort of chemical production of the hydrogen, which is simple setup, with the overflow going down through this, and then a maser. He's going with maser for the whole machine itself, being shot up to something up in the either ozone or not ozone, but ionosphere, like we do now with the ionospheric heaters for all over the planet. We've got at least 13 ionospheric heaters. HARP is one. I think it's IceCat's one in Norway, and I know there's one in Moscow and one in Puerto Rico, and they've got ones that float. And so all these, the floating ones are huge, bigger than oil rigs. So we have all these ionospheric heaters, and that goes with a lot of Tesla's work as far as being able to energize the ionosphere. So it could have been that sort of thing where it was actually energizing the ionosphere. It could be. I'm the subchamber guy. This works, and then the rest is theory, and I know the theories, and I understand them, and they're very plausible, and I could see it being some sort of machine.
I made the joke about Deep House, and nobody got that. It's like you could say it's really underground music. So
we actually did a pretty decent sound sample directly above the subchamber. So it's on this. I actually have this subchamber model. So I've got concrete above it, and then I have a platform and used a microphone above it. It was just a GoPro, so it's not really the best microphone. It was isolated all around it, and then had that sound analyzed, and we certainly show what the sound analysis is, but it's mainly really low frequencies, what I'm trying to pick up, and it's lower than human hearing. So it's lower than 50 hertz is the primary pulses coming through the subchamber itself. and that's really significant.
How hard is the pressure on your chest right now? Like, can you actually feel the pulse?
Well, I can feel it on my leg that's touching my neck, but no, that'd be pretty subtle. I'm just not that in tune. But it does. One interesting thing about the site is everybody that's come here, they start to they're like I think consciousness is a highly overused word at this time. But I'm gonna throw down once again with everybody.
Oh, this is the place to do it. Testify, John Cadman. Testify.
Testify. I think it changes kind of your mental testify. Yeah, I'm testifying. It changes something in everybody's being where they just all of a sudden start talking about very in-depth subjects. Like all of a sudden their brain turns on. It's strange. And if it's, see, I have to do a better analysis and a better microphone pickup that's actually going to be directed at the subhuman hearing. There's some word for that. Subsonic.
If you were to get a drum kick condenser microphone.
So eventually, that's kind of like one of the next projects is to get excellent audio inputs and analysis. And I'm thinking it might be getting close to like the Schumann resonance, like 7 hertz. If humans, their brains and everything run at that frequency. The Earth runs at that frequency. It's critical. And when they first put astronauts in space, they actually you have to add the Schumann resonance to the capsules, otherwise people get sick. So they've done underground experiments. I got tons of info on that sort of stuff. So if you trigger this Schumann resonance in somebody's brain, then automatically start to calm down, resonate, and start to be able to think and talk on higher level subjects. It's amazing the subjects that people are coming up with here. I'm blown away.
Well, I know a little bit about sound. Having like DJ'd in many nightclubs and parties, and I find that like you have people who like they'll dance to music that's 160, 170, 200 beats per minute. But the most relaxing places to go to are always places that play deep house or tech house that is at about between 110 and 115 beats per minute, and the bass frequency wave is much it's much deeper. They cap the frequencies off at a lower level, and there's a much larger valley between that and other instruments. So from any time that I've ever been out or played that type of music or even heard that type of music, it's always more relaxing because you can't get anything that sounds exciting unless it's rock or you've got some type of weird note arrangement. But for just a straight 4/4 beat, it's probably one of the most calming things that you can actually have. And I know this from experience. The larger the speaker stack, the better it feels, and pretty well. It's
yes.
I can understand where you're coming from with that. Obviously, nowadays there are a lot of people who use other things to help them along that journey, but in addition to the music. But with that and the power generation, like, do you think that the power generation was the intended effect, or do you think that was the byproduct? Or on the other side of the coin, do you think that the resonance was the byproduct, and they're just like, oh, this is what we're using it for, but it makes this cool sound that makes us feel good?
That's a good question. Because usually usually the question is about the water pumping abilities, and I think the water pumping ability is the byproduct.
It's almost like woodpecker.
The woodpecker, like the duga, I think it's duga or druga woodpecker. That we used to be at Chernobyl or whatever. That was the woodpecker. It was a giant array from 77 to the meltdown at Chernobyl, which powered it. Yeah, that was the woodpecker that people in Eugene, Oregon would hear, and also ham operators. It was like 10 hertz. I think power generation was key. I think that's what eventually everybody will discover. And it's so high tech. The room itself, just to point out some things, like now this model, I put all sorts of ink injection, so tubes, at key spots all the way, like on the walls, and then up in the fins, put ink injection so that I can actually take pictures. I had a glass top on it, so I can take pictures of the fluid dynamics within the room. And it's actually a three-dimensional fluid dynamic in that they used, well, water when it hits a surface fans, it does a perpendicular fan. Sound when it goes through the water bounces like pool balls, so it's reflected. So even when the water come in here, it fan, and then part of it was they used the ceiling of the subterranean chamber as a plane surface, and then it had water that comes up and around, and so they used the plateau within the step, and then it turns here and then shoots straight across, and they actually did a Fibonacci, three-dimensional Fibonacci, or golden mean, or spiral vortex down into the pit. So they actually did a 3D drop down to the pit. So you've got rotation, it's like a tornado, or
it's like
everything,
like a vortex.
Tornadoes and hurricanes and things like that. Well, hurricanes especially, they use they're on Fibonacci. Most everything in the universe is on Fibonacci.
Now, have you heard of the theory that the pyramid was used as a method to create monoatomic gold?
I'm familiar with that. That's a tough one. It's a theory. I don't know.
Sorry,
you have to do it. You actually have to do this stuff. It's the thing to prove it. He's really well versed on a lot of things, but it's not. Something tells me that's not it. I think monatomic gold is part of this puzzle. I'm not positive. Not this part, but the upper part.
What's the next step for you with this? Like now that you have it running and it's staying in one piece, apparently. For now.
It has to. This cannot be breaking. It's not fixable.
Well, I'm making jokes about it all week, and it's just like, okay, hey man, if it's either it works and it's the most amazing thing ever because it's something that is thousands of years old that we've got a small model of somewhere in the Western United States. It's working, or it blows up, and I've got the most amazing YouTube show of all time. I'm not really complaining, except for your health and your well-being, which I'm glad to say that it's going well. But what's the next step? Like you have it working, and was that like your whole goal was just to get it working, or did you are you trying to prove something? What is the
next step? The next step, what I really want to do is now I've done the next step. Really, there's a few different things. One, I want to do really good recordings and analysis of the audio. That's one thing, and that you have to really get far better equipment for that. And this is extremely limited funding. Let's put it that way. And then, so that I want to do, that's pretty simple because you bond a microphone to above the sub chamber and then sample it. But really what I want to do is make a model which is running like this, but I want to incorporate some cameras into the model itself. So it actually, when it's running and pulsing, that I could actually do pictures of it running. And then instead of using, this is sprinkler tubing or drip, water drip irrigation stuff that I use for the ink. Real low tech, but it worked and it figures things out. What I really want to do is use something like some sort of ink injection, like an electronic ink injection, either like they do for like electronic fuel injection. Somebody that actually needs somebody that's really well versed, because I don't really have that much time to put into this, but make a model which has a programmable ink injection, maybe of different colors, so you can actually see the dimensions, and cameras, and a thick, it's got to be really bulletproof to even do this. And then to actually do videos of the different flows, especially if you could use colored ink and timing and turn things on and off. You can do some amazing things like, is it Fujita? Is that the one that does tornado stuff? Fujita scale, I think it's called, or something. So he did lots of cool stuff where he's doing like smoke within like a room to do formation of tornadoes and be able to film it and analyze it. So I'd like to do something like that and allow it. I've never done an ink injection with this thing running, because anything I've done with glass or etc. just immediately destroys it. So that's really what I want to do. So it just takes, talent and some, cash and stuff like that. That's what I'd like to do next. I think that'd be super cool.
And what's the end goal?
I don't have one. There's so many people that are coming on board with amazing talents. And so this isn't just about me is the thing. This is my piece of puzzles, the subchamber. And so there's, people that are doing stuff on the upper chambers and all that. I want to be part of it, but I just want to have my piece of the puzzle. I want it to be as accurate as possible, really. And then we'll see what happens in the future. But this piece of the puzzle is accurate, and it's absolutely proven. It runs every time. Nothing has started. This is third version running, so you can replicate it. Just go off Giza plans, so anybody can replicate it.
Now, I've heard that there have been some other individuals that, and considering some of the things that you and I have kind of bonded over, I know that there are some stories you've told me that there have been some models that some other people have tried to make that have not been so successful. What was their failing, and why do you think that they chose to go that route?
That's pretty funny. There's one individual that made one of these half-inch to the foot scale, and which is double the size. And back in 2000, had some water barrels on his garage roof, and I was trying to work with him.
Now, I understand that he has some other theories about the pyramid.
His thing is, his whole gig happens. He's kind of changed. He had Kunkel's books, and so he's reproducing Kunkel's work, every Kunkel's. But he's just doing replicating somebody else's work without proof of concept. But he wants to do. He's just following the Waterlox theory for construction, which this is plausible. You still got to use a pump, and this is the pump, and he never gives anybody any recognition in his books and stuff. So, and not a fan.
No, I can understand that. I've had some run-ins myself with this individual, usually regarding the Orion correlation theory. And it's one of those things. Everyone has their own opinion, and and it's either you have an opinion or you're wrong. And I'm one of those. We'll wait and see. I'll go with what the universities are telling me that are also corresponding with the other researchers, the numerous ones that are out there, and they're all saying the same thing with regards to that. One of the things they're different. They are differentiating on. They're different on. Is with regards to the water pump theory, and at least I could say I've talked to Baval, who is also an engineer and somebody who's studied the pyramids extensively, and he seems to think that there's no way that it could have actually held water because of the porous nature of the pyramids as a whole. Like, you get that kind of pressure that's in there, it would have just been leaking out the sides, even with the capstones. But again, we don't have the capstones to test that, unfortunately, or not the capstone, the casing stones.
Yeah, I know what you're referencing. I just don't think it was used for a water pump to put water into the pyramid itself. There's just a little perk shaft. That's the air release. It's air or gas. It could be a Brown's gas, which is HHO, which is significant, because you'd have cavitation in the line, and when you have cavitation, and especially with limestone sort of environment, which is electrically active, you could possibly have hydrogen and oxygen or some sort of composition of that, and that's kind of what I'm testing here right now, for what gas would actually be released. This actually has a gas removal line, which would have gone up to the Queen's chamber, and then the Queen's chamber itself is lowered down, like I think it's a foot, and then so it would actually have water that would accumulate there, so you'd have kind of perk, like a coffee percolator, and then it would run down the hallway, the horizontal hallway, and then there was a well shaft, they call well shaft, and then it dropped back down, so you'd have whatever overflow would just kind of drool down the. But that doesn't require, water being held within the pyramid structure itself. It's just a bypass, and if it leaks it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. This if it leaks, it doesn't matter. It's not key. It seeps through the sides, or like a limestone kind of absorbs water, seeps.
Now, you're also supposed to be on a conference. You're supposed to be going to Egypt to speak.
I was supposed to be on one of the speakers on Chris Dunn's tour. He's over there right now, and I just came to the point. I've got back issues, and also I got nerve issues in my arm and stuff like that. We're sitting for more than about 2 hours in a plane seat or in car seats, and it pinches the nerve in the lower back and brutally painful. And if I had to do 20 hours of flights over there, etc., I just would be in incredible pain. And so trying to figure out how to do that in the future, I had to just back off, because I would have ended up in a hospital. I would have been laid out. So that's, but I'm not dead. So there's future. There's future I'd love to go over there in the future with Chris Dunn. I mean, the most absolutely stable guy around, and I can't think of anybody better to go with. And he had invited me on this tour, and I think it was in January. I just finally said, I can't do it. And which is strange, because I'm usually pretty durable, but I was chief engineer on king crab boats up in Alaska for a few years, and that's brutal work. It's the deadliest catch stuff, and actually one of the boats was on deadliest catch. I was chiefing on after the fact. So it's not future. I would like to go over there with Chris, but also have like my Barb with me, so she could help.
And also, you have another passion of yours, and which you're a, and I forget the breed, but you also raise very
Black Russian Terriers, which is Russian military dogs. The Red Star Kennel in Russia during the Cold War. You can just imagine the Red Star Kennel. They actually created their own military dog.
But they're so fluffy.
So they couldn't use German Shepherds, and after World War II, they can't use German, of course. And so they created a dog out of a giant Schnauzer, Rottweiler, and Airedale primarily. A little bit of Newfie in there, a little other stuff. And so they made this big dog that lives a long time. Looks kind of like a Bouvier, and lives a long time, doesn't shed much, likes snow, which is good. Really smart, kind of like it's got the Rottweiler temperament. Rotties don't live very long, and they don't move very well. Usually I live to be about 8, and they don't move well. So that's what they created, and then I've had those since my first real full-blooded one in 2003. So they didn't let them out till 95 after the dissolution of the collapse of the Soviet Union. So the first ones were smuggled out in 95 as giant schnauzers. So I've got imports from a couple from St. Petersburg. I have one from Moscow now, but I've had a couple from Moscow. One from France, Germany. So I raise, some litter or two a year with Barb. And she actually had one might have been the first litter, but it was from 1995, and it was from the giant Schnauzer breeder who smuggled them in as giant Schnauzers. So, and that's how we met. She's in Denniston, Connecticut. Great dentist, actually, in Hartford, Connecticut. We raised Black Russian Terriers together.
And the patience that it takes to do that, do you attribute that to the patience that it's taken? Like I'm a new dad, and I look at my kid, and it's she could be an absolute pain even at 3 months old. It's still possible. She's a Zougar. It's in our blood. And you're like, okay, like, oh, that's absolutely adorable, and you're like, you have that patience and that, okay, like, oh, it's fine. There's that biology that kicks in, which doesn't really usually translate except through real training to be able to do repetitive tasks or to do something that's going to take a very long amount of time, especially by yourself or even with your brother. When you're looking at building something like this, and people compare the pyramid building, and they say that it could have been built within 25 years, which may or may not be accurate. At the end of the day, we weren't there. Do you have more of an appreciation now for the people who did build it, no matter who they were? Could have been space aliens, could have been, the people from, was it supposed to be built in the old kingdom? Like, for those types of workers, and for that type of work, and that type of just sheer engineering, and the ingenuity.
I have extreme appreciation. A lot of it, the appreciation that I have, has to do with the work that Chris Dunn has done. On let's say the bull boxes, quote unquote bull boxes of the Serapeum, which are he's done because he was in a machine shop, so he made extreme precision items over the years, and he actually has done checked the flatness of the surfaces of these very large, like this size granite boxes, and they're absolutely precise. And but the work that Chris Dunn has presented adds to the idea that there was high-tech civilization that had some sort of machine tools. You can't do precision cuts and in granite without some sort of machine tools. With it's not just machine tools. It's not just the grinding bits or something. You actually have to have some sort of absolutely straight bed, which guides the tools. So you have to make those, and when you get further into it, you're just saying high tech. Everything I was done, I see it high tech. They didn't just guess at this model before they made it. The shaft going down is like it's a 26-degree angle, and it's 330 feet. And for like 100 feet, it varies by 1/10 of an inch. Now this is basically a 4-foot square shaft down through bedrock limestone. Limestone's not that hard, but I tell you, I drilled a well through limestone, and I had tungsten carbide bit and rotary things, and it's surprisingly hard to do. So I have a lot of appreciation. It's not, some of the stuff they've done over in Egypt, saying, "Oh yeah, you just chip away at some sort of stuff." It's bullshit. I have appreciation.
Have you considered building a scale model Great Pyramid?
Yeah, we're going to do that.
Oh,
that's
shit.
That's going to be part of this next build, because we've got the flat here, and we put the pulse generator at the right height, where we can do we're going to start off with a wood pyramid over it, housing, and then what's that?
Stucco.
Stucco?
Stucco.
I guess stucco.
We're going to put concrete over the wood.
My bro Mike's talking to me. He needs to give me a hat, though. Anyways,
Need a hat?
I need a hat.
Well, the sun's setting. I could see it. It's probably a lot of light in your eyes right now.
Give me that. This is. Come here. This is my brother, and Mike, and I couldn't have done it without him. And this is a styly hat. For somebody with where does it go? Like this. There we go. We're styling. See, now I'm on a tour, but I need to have a tan button-down shirt.
Some type of vest with many pockets.
Some character left this here back in 2005. he wanted it back, or his wife did. Some guy named Chris.
That was not me.
No, it wasn't you. It was Mr. Dunn.
And I think I've got a question coming through.
No, I really want to do the scale pyramid over this, and then orient it correctly to north, etc. And then that upper rock, which just happens to be there, everything was here. That'll be about the right height of the Queen's Chamber, and there's a lot of people that have shown some sort of effects at that height. They talk about preserving stuff, all that, but why not try to see what, if nothing else, what it feels on the body.
Now, I know that there are a lot of theories based around symbolism, whether Egypt is dealing with the feminine or the masculine. You have to think about it this way, and this is kind of interesting going back to episode 80 when we had Gary A. David on here, and we had a little bit of a discussion, and, it at least seems to me that if you look at the cutaway of the pyramid and the king's chamber, all the way down to, well, the subterranean, if you look at it and the way that it's described in certain ancient paintings or ancient designs is like a man impregnating a woman. And if you think about it, to all of you out there who have...
What are you talking about?
Okay, well, the way that the pyramid is supposed to have been shaped is that it's supposed to be representative of a man impregnating a woman. You have a pulse generator that's shooting some type of force upwards. It's the actual function tends to agree with the symbolism, which is funny in a high school type of sense. And as a 35-year-old man, I still have a good time. But still, the function seems to have been described through metaphor, which is exactly what Egypt has done. So even that fits, which that kind of blows my mind in a giggly I'm 15 type of way. Just putting that out there.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I think. I think that they incorporated energy from the vacuum, and I've really explored heavily John Bedini and Tom Bearden's works. And John Bedini, who passed last year, the year before, unfortunately, he had extreme student of Tesla. So he really studied and reproduced all sorts of energy from the vacuum sort of machines, kind of like generators, but over unity type machines. And there's an enormous amount of energy in the vacuum. It's not empty. It's extremely full. That's most people's works. Nassim Haramein has wonderful lectures on it. This stuff's really good. But the trick with energy from the vacuum, you actually have to be able to create some sort of vacuum pulse, either a spike. It's a pulse with modulations, the terminology they use. If you can create a spike and a vacuum right after it, then there's all this energy that's in the vacuum. And it's enormous, it's near infinite. It actually gets sucked right in there. And if you can pull that, you can trap that energy and send it off, you can trap enormous amounts of energy. And that's quite proven through various models that Bedini did. He has wonderful lectures that I think it's energetics. They have tons of his lectures. They filmed them before he died. Thank God. This stuff's amazing and proven models. So that's not just talking out your ass.
What do you think?
I think the spike. Okay, here's the next. So the spike, we got a spike here, right? And so right after it's the vacuum. That's the cavitation. That's the not the cavitation, but the what's it called? Rarefaction. So you got the compression wave and you got rarefaction wave. So you go that going up into the pyramid, compression, rarefaction. That's vacuum, literally. So you got a pulse with modulation, and this energy goes right through everything. And somehow it seems like that might have been part of the equation.
What do you think they were powering?
Excuse me?
What do you think they were powering?
I don't know. We use power for everything. I think they use it for some sort of I don't know. It's anybody's guess there. Somebody had machines, they had machined artifacts there.
Like I'm just trying to think here. Like it seems very strange, and I know that I'm not trying to find fault in any stretch of the imagination. I'm just trying to find the reason, the why, or the how this rebuilding of something that the last time it actually ran may have been 4,500 years ago, in a place literally all the way across the globe. And how that somebody in our day and age, with all of our technology and all of our, wonders and the ability to, launch Teslas at Mars and, put put all of the Earth's information onto just a microchip the size of our thumbnail, that a guy in Western United States was able to build, test, and get working a machine that had multiple uses. And I'm trying to understand the why besides the why not. Because if you just said, like, I'm just going to build this, and it's like, why are you going to build it? Yeah, something to do. It's...
Oh, it's funny. I just think it's leftover from pre cataclysm.
It's kind of addictive.
Why build this? I just didn't want once it was built. I just didn't want it to disappear. Like the knowledge. I released every single piece of this model and all the information, and so that it can be replicated. It doesn't just disappear here. So I'm not trying to have this hidden piece of the puzzle where you send me $20 and I'll show you what it is. So I'm not going that way because it doesn't work. But I think it was just pre-flood, and I think it was left over from then.
So your drive originated in antediluvian times. Are you? Is your drive to build this originated in antediluvian times? Are you a time traveler, John Cadman?
A time traveler? Oh yeah, that's me. No, I just think. I think it's on a higher. I think it's a higher level thing, but I'm not a time traveler. And
I had to clarify.
That. I just think
there are some places that may question that, or may say like, "Oh, you're using arcane knowledge. You're part of the Illuminati," or something along those lines. So I just need to make sure I have to qualify for the audience at home. Now that you're going to be building the pyramid, how far along are you with building the new model? Like, have you sussed out plans, source material? Like, how far along are you with that, and when are you expecting to get started?
Yeah, when it's going to be done, Mike?
When it gets warmer.
When it gets warmer.
It's cold and rainy.
I don't know. Hopefully this summer would be nice. It's just a gorgeous area during the summer. It's fun to do stuff. So might be fun to. Wouldn't take much to build it. My bro Mike, he kicks ass building stuff. So I'd like summer might be nice if we can pull that off. Just for the basic one that made out of wood. Is with the pyramids that they've done, like in Moscow. Outside of Moscow, they've got the 144-foot pyramid that they've used to do testing on shape effects. On seeds and water and stuff like that. They've done all sorts of stuff on it. Anatoly Golod and his brother did it. So there's lots of tests of that, but you have to use the materials. You're supposed to not use any ferrous materials within it, because it affects it does something with the magnetism of the earth. So you have to try to do everything either non-ferrous. The one in Moscow, they used fiberglass and other non-ferrous type materials for the building.
What are some tests you're going to try out with this? You know, like Mythbusters busted Pyramid Power a long time ago.
I saw that episode, and they if you saw the episode, they actually showed that they cut an apple in half and they put it in there, and one on the outside, and it worked. It worked in the pyramid. So, well, that doesn't really prove anything. There might have been something on the knife, and so they put it in a square shape, and then the other one on the outside, and then it's like, look, didn't preserve it. And that was it. It was crap. And I've submitted this to Mythbusters, and they won't reply. I tried it like every year, see if they'll do this. And they did Bedini's what is it called? It's a monopole generator, which is a magnetically it has magnets in it, and 10 magnetic coils. And it was so they're going to bust his myth. So they got some guy from MIT to oversee it. Well, they didn't put any magnets within the magnetic motor. And so look, it doesn't work. Mythbusters, I think it's just kind of some sort of disinfo show. And I've seen other ones like on Brown's gas and stuff, which I know is wrong. Big fuck you to them, man. Don't listen to them.
Well, you know, what was it? Well, the only reason that people watched the show was Jamie and Adam blowing up shit, which was always fun.
I love that.
That was the whole thing. And Carrie Byron. That's the only reason.
Of course. That's
the only reason people watched it.
They did Mythbusters on sleep effects, or if 20-minute naps work. And they did it with the king crab boats. It was really cool, actually.
Now, have you approached any other shows or any other, I'm going to say, organizations that have...
I was on Ancient Aliens episode with Chris Dunn and some other notable people. They did okay. They didn't come here. I had the model running and stuff. I don't know, but I'm always open to shows. Rob Arnold's and Trevor Thompson. Sorry, Trevor, I might have messed up your last name. But anyways, they're doing Awakening Truth, which is hopefully a series, but they definitely did at least one episode where they put together. Actually beautiful things. They went down to Peru and they did some stuff with Brian Forrester, and the interview with Chris Dunn here, and interviews with showed up a couple times, did interviews with me, and Rob Arnold's compilation for Awakening Truth was quite well done. That's his gig, is kind of production. He does production.
Now, since you're not in Egypt, and again, I'm also looking at the clock. I know that we've got about 15 minutes left at most. What was your lecture supposed to be about? And
it was mainly just to go. It was on the subchamber, and because there were going to be 2 visits. Mm-hmm. Now that they're going up the Nile, but they're going to Serapeum to see those machine bull boxes, and then they were going to go down into the subterranean chamber, and so we're going to look for. There's damage in there that shows on the ceiling, if nothing else, that there was cavitation damage on the ceiling of the subchamber. So it's going to go down in there and talk and show the different fluid dynamics. And so that was part of it, and then Chris Dunn has a ton of knowledge there. And then it's just part of the lecture. So I was going to do kind of the Giza, some of the Great Pyramid, because Chris Dunn's done the upper half.
Mhm.
And so his work absolutely bonds with mine is the thing. I've done the subchamber. It's the motor for the Great Pyramid. This is the motor that starts and runs. This runs the Great Pyramid. This is a giant motor.
And what do you think of the work of researchers Danny Kerr and Doug Keenan?
I love their work. I love Doug. I truly believe that Doug Keenan's work is part of the next step. And he actually he does calculations. Bless his heart. He does calculations. He did the pressures on this model itself. So he's like, it seems like, he told me after the fact, he said, your pressures seem too high. And so I actually I got things on water hammer, which is the shock wave. And that's hard to find things on that. So I found a book on that and did the calculations for what the pressure should be at the wastegate. And his numbers matched almost exactly with what I have on gauges here. So his work, Doug Keenan's works is phenomenal. I think he's the next step, to be honest.
He holds a patent for the RCA Universal Remote.
What?
Yeah, he's the guy who invented it.
Doug?
Yeah, I'm not kidding. He's telling me, I'm like,
I know he's crazy smart. Okay.
Oh yeah.
He does all the calculations and stuff, and I'm not the calculation guy. I mean, I've done them. I had physics and calculus and all that sort of stuff. I went to university, but it's like, I'm not really interested in numbers that much, other than put a gauge on it. Let's make it run. Let's see what happens. Take videos and, we can correlate a bit. But that's proof of concept. Doug Keenan, he's a whiz kid. And Danny Kerr, he's got TeslaPyramids.com. I'm part of that. Danny Kerr's audio fanatic. He's a drummer in a band, but he has all sorts of audio equipment. He's gung ho, and what more can you ask for that's smart? And he has experience. Practical experience means everything. I'm not interested in people that are they don't have any experience at all on stuff, and they're just listening bits and pieces here, and they're throwing out crap. And it's like if you were from, is it Missouri? I think it's the Show Me State, or Arkansas or something. Just show me what it works and what doesn't.
Well, from a theoretical standpoint, this is I'm going to say the first thing. Well, it's one of the first things to actually be built and shown to be functional from a theory that came out of an idea from how ancient Egypt, worked, to say to a certain extent.
This is equivalent to the Rosetta Stone. Rosetta Stone changed everything for deciphering hieroglyphs. This is Rosetta Stone for the machine. It was absolutely proven machine of huge scale that was, obviously designed to do exactly a pulse generator. It's a hydraulic pulse generator. I had Dr. Jack Collet here, and he's like the godfather of modern hydraulic pulse generators. He invented them. He invented offshore oil drilling rig. They use a hydraulic pulse generator to create faster drilling through the cavitation of the shale. So they send hydraulic pulses like 5,000 feet down through the water-laden, exact parallel to this, down to the bottom of the well shaft under the ocean. And then it's not the compression wave. It's not the compression. It's cavitation, the rarefaction wave. It's not cavitation. It's just rarefaction. Rarefaction wave, extreme low pressure, and you're on shale, which is extremely compressed, and you put a low pressure thing there, it just flakes it right off. That's one thing he invented. He invented that. He was here with Chris Dunn, 2005. And then the other thing he invented was look ahead drilling imaging. So they send this compression wave down, and you have sensors offset of the drill rig in the soil of the ocean bottom, and you could actually send shock waves like they do with dynamite and stuff. They used to do with dynamite for checking how deep oil would be or water. So sends shock wave down, it goes down through the earth, and then bounces back. This is shock waves down through the pyramid. It's an exact parallel. That's how they could look ahead to imaging, was they tell how close they are to oil. Amazing technology. So I thought I had invented the terminology hydraulic pulse generator, because I was like, okay, it's hydraulic. I came up with that just from description. So I typed in Google, I was looking for myself, to be honest. I typed in hydraulic pulse generator. I got a couple key phrases that I use to see where my stuff ends up. But then his stuff showed up, and I looked at it and go, oh my God, he does amazing work, and he's absolutely brilliant. He came here, and we're doing calculations on stuff. I said, yeah, the water flowing across the subchamber would probably go about 100 feet per second is what I came up with from the drops and back pressures and stuff. And he came up basically the same. When you're doing calculations, you got to rough it a little bit, be fast.
What do you think is going to be I'm not going to say the next step. What do you think is the next evolution or the next piece in the puzzle? You mentioned Doug Keenan's work, and if like we had him and Danny on the show, and I think you were actually in the chat at that time, and
yeah,
I know
it's a nice show. Yeah,
we got very drunk. We were just like, oh my God, it's like I was gone and Danny was gone.
I love that shit.
Doug was the only straight one, and he's like talking all these high-minded ideas. I'm just sitting there going like, yeah, man, this will work. And Danny's just like phoning me from like a nightclub, and I just hear music in the background. I'm like, where are you? But it was still a good show, and I know just because we had a shit ton of fun.
I love those guys,
and
I think we're going to do something. There's so much talent between those two guys, and they're really motivated, and they do stuff. I mean, Doug's written. I have 3 of his books. Just sharp. They're both sharp and motivated. I think we're going to do some really interesting things in the future. I know we are. It's not, I don't think we are. I know we are. We're getting models. I mean, this model, is 2 years old. And the first year I didn't touch it after we built it because it damn near killed Bro Mike and myself. It's like, I didn't come back to it for 3 months after Chris left. Later. So now I'm motivated. Chris Dunn's healthy too. He had like a triple bypass heart surgery after Bro Mike's Daddy's fried chicken nearly killed him. And then
I make some wicked chicken.
So he's healthy. He's had surgeries. Doug and Danny, great guys. We're going to do some amazing stuff.
Do you think we're going to be able to image the planets and the solar system with the machine you guys build?
What?
The original machine, if I'm not mistaken, that is proposed by Danny and Doug's co-work, was that the machine was used to image the solar system.
Yes.
Essentially.
Yes.
Do you think you'd at least be able to get Metro Seattle Or is this not necessarily, you're just trying to be able to make sure it can build, you build it and it works and it doesn't...
I think Doug Keenan's works excellent, and he also is extremely fluent in what Chris Dunn has produced. So here's part of the problem: is there's more chambers to be discovered in the Great Pyramid itself. There's even like an example. They're saying there's a chamber. They're thinking there's about the size of a small aircraft, like 90 foot long, that they're figuring still up in there that somebody might be able to do some work and find it. But there's also an example is in the hallway, the horizontal hallway to the Queen's chamber. It was the Japanese. They through imaging found there was a hole or some sort of cavity, so they drilled through one of the walls, and what they found was call it singing sand, which is quartz sand, and the beaches that have the singing sand, when you step on it, because it's quartz and it has piezo type effects, it sings, it makes noises, it squeaks. So, and this is not local sand. So whoever made this, they put singing sand, resonating sand within cavities next to the Queen's chamber. That's just one example. I mean, that's proven. You're looking at a sound-driven machine, and sound is everything. That's one of the most powerful things around. I think there's so much more to discover. This is not the end by any means. This is a piece. That's a piece of the puzzle. And I love to work with people that are sharp and motivated and actually do stuff. I just don't. Talking alone's generally not enough. Somebody that works. This work.
And that being said, I think that is it for tonight. Until the next chapter. And the next piece of the puzzle.
Cool.
So, I am going to see if I can find some music that matches that. There's no way I can beat match that, unfortunately, on my iPad.
I've enjoyed shows with you, Chris. And
it's always a pleasure, Joe.
No, you're fun. You're fun. And knowledgeable. You're smart. And then I believe you and I and Chris Dunn are going to be doing a show together after he gets back from Egypt from the tour.
I do believe as well, yes.
Yeah, he agreed to that. That'll be, I love it.
Whew, that's going to be a fun time. I'm going to have to read up on some stuff to make sure I can keep up with him and you both in the same chat space together.
Oh, we'll get it dialed in. Both coasts.
Oh, thankfully we've got some time to do that.
Okay.
I'm going to play the outro music. I still didn't get the outro music that was missing from the last time. But let's see, what can I play on here? I think that would actually get me a strike. And you know what? I'm just going to go with...
Master of Puppets.
Yeah, we're gonna go epic, I think. There we go. All right. There we go, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Chris George Zuger. This is the Den of Lore episode 82, March 15th, 2016 or 2018. 2016, my goodness. This has been an amazing show with Mr. John Cadman and his Pyramid Pulse Generator model, which has been running for almost 2.5 hours straight. Epic show. If you're only catching it now, go back and listen to the rest of it. We're going to be back on the program on next week. We've got Scott Brown of In the Field. He's a world-famous ufologist and videographer. We're going to be discussing the current state of ufology and his work in UFOs. And let me switch out here. Where is my screen share? That is not it. Main Den of Lore. And there we go.
What? Is that the blue one?
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you have a wonderful evening and a wonderful weekend. And again, don't forget to visit patreon.com/Den of Lore. Because I did forget, we do have Richard Casaro on next Thursday. So again, you'll be able to catch a... do we have another doubleheader next week? I believe we do. So it's $9 a month for our Masterclass series. You also do get entered into our monthly draw, so you get a chance to win a t-shirt, courtesy of Den of Lore, get some Den of Lore swag, and, you know, this week, this month I may actually throw in, because it's March Madness, I may actually throw in a free mug with that as well. So it'll be a mug and a t-shirt for this month. You've got a couple of days, almost 2 weeks to sign up. So denoflore.com, click on the link, or go to patreon.com/Den of Lore. Help us grow the show. We are now on 4 video channels, as well as on Spreaker, Live, in addition to iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, and Deprogrammed Radio. Oh, and also Google Play. 100,000 listeners in 160 countries worldwide every single week. And we have not been able to get there if it were not for our listeners and our viewers. So thank you all. And have yourselves a good night.